So if you'd asked me a couple of years ago if I was a comic book geek, I would have probably said no. I mean, I enjoyed comic book movies, stuff like the MCU, even DC movies, the Dark Knight trilogy. I enjoyed comic book movies, but I hadn't actually really read comic books. It wasn't anything personal. Just I hadn't really known where to get them or where to start with. But that all changed a couple of years ago, and I'm going to now give you kind of a short run up of how I actually became pretty much a comic book geek. Well, as I said fairly on, I knew comic book movies, but I didn't actually read comic books themselves. That changed 2 years ago in 2016. What happened in 2016? Well, the movies and TV shows kind of that comic book shows and movies that were based on the comic books, they started developing kind of more complex storylines based on the comics. And as a result of that, I kind of had to start to do a little research. I mean, stuff like Captain America's Civil War, that was based on the actual Civil War comic. The Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, that was based on The Dark Knight Returns, and the CW show was doing a Flashpoint at the time. So I felt it was kind of inevitable that I would have to have. So ended up buying a couple. And just at first, I bought a couple of comic books just to kind of read through and get a bit of background information. That was in 2016, and I gradually over time started to pick them up, kind of mainly based on either kind of characters, specific characters, or kind of movies, either ones that were coming up or ones that had passed. Stuff like Civil War, The Dark Knight Returns, Suicide Squad, Flashpoint, and although it was 2016, we knew at this point that Thor Ragnarok would include pieces of Planet Hulk. So there was also stuff like Age of Ultron, Planet Hulk, and towards the end, Batman Year One, which had a loose basis for Batman Begins. So yeah, gradually I began to start collecting them. By the end of 2016, I had 9 comic books in total. Yeah, they had some of the ones I mentioned that I'd bought over time, and also one I got for Christmas, which was Iron Man Demon in a Bottle, which I also enjoyed as it was a particularly famous storyline, had a loose basis towards Iron Man 2. So, yeah, I mainly collected them to kind of get a better understanding of either upcoming movies or TV shows or ones that had passed. In 2017, though, that became a little bit different. I began kind of looking up more comic books once again. If there were particular movie plots or TV kind of plot points once again, but then I also began looking for kind of certain characters or certain events, such as for a time last year, one character that I thought was suddenly really cool, even though I hadn't read that much about him, was Agent Venom, kind of Spider-Man's high school bully who later kind of seemingly gets the symbiote and actually becomes a rather noble soldier, which led me to search for a run of his and eventually find one of his runs with the Guardians of the Galaxy, leading me to buy that comic. And once again, this continued for some time. I gradually collected more and more, kind of either based on certain storylines or with certain characters, or even with ones I'd heard particularly a lot about, such as Batman Nightfall. That was probably the longest one I read, and it was one of the last ones I bought in 2017, which it had a particular basis towards The Dark Knight Rises. So I eventually began to get that, but not only that, I also began to get a series of kind of small stories, ones of particular characters that I liked, but I hadn't read that much about, such as Spider-Man. Kind of Spider-Man, The Flash, and I gradually began to accumulate more over time. Thus, by the end of 2017, I'd gone from having 9 comic books that I'd had at the end of 2016 to having 30. And yeah, that was quite a big leap. And kind of in the way I've also done collecting in the last kind of two months or so, I've recently come up to 40 comic books. Yeah, which, of course, some of them have been kind of inspired by the movies, such as Black Panther, for example. Yet some of them I just liked kind of like the look of them, the story of them, such as Justice League. I mean, I did buy the Justice League New 52 Volume 1 at first, purely because the movie was coming up a year later, so yeah, that was a good one. But then, as I said, it's not just Marvel or DC either. I've also got three that are neither Marvel nor DC, which consisted of the Kingsman comic, which of course is my favourite movie, one of the Serenity comics, those Left Behind, seeing as I really enjoyed the TV show, and I also, for my birthday, one of them I received that I'd asked for was the Valerian and Laureline comics. And you know what? I'm, I'm not, I'm not ashamed of it. I went from being a person who was kind of okay just watching the movies or watching TV shows, not really knowing anything about comics, that I gradually began to accumulate more and more over time. And even when it wasn't just particular characters I was looking for, it was also kind of the big storylines, like Secret Invasion. That's one of my more recent ones. And the thing is, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is I went from being a person who, if you asked me if I was a comic book geek, I would probably have said no, not really, to being a person who, having looked recently and discovered that I now have 40 comic books, I gotta admit, yeah, I am a comic book geek. I mean, I went from being a person who knew practically nothing about comic books to I suddenly know an awful lot, and I've got a lot of I've got a lot of material behind it. I mean, in terms of the numbers, I've got about sort of like 17 Marvel, something like 12 DC, and 3 that are neither. But yeah, so it's a little bit uneven sided with me having a bit more Marvel. But once again, I do now actually consider myself a comic book geek. I'm not the strongest comic book geek by any means. I mean, you can find a load more kind of avid comic book readers kind of throughout the internet or throughout YouTube, such as Comic Storian. But yeah, I went from being a person who I wasn't really a comic book geek to now I am. I mean, if that wasn't evident by the sheer amount of comic book memorabilia I've got lying around my room, but yeah, it's weird to think. A couple of years ago I wasn't, now I am. But we'll have to see if I pick up any more in the future and what storylines may avail themselves then. So, until next time, see ya.